On a warm June evening in 2017, Florida State Attorney Aramis Ayala, then the first and only black state attorney in Florida, was driving through Orlando's Paramore neighborhood. She had just finished teaching a class at Florida A/and M University College of Law. Behind the wheel of a government-issued vehicle, she was headed home, presumably thinking about her day, her students, and perhaps even her family waiting at home. But in a matter of seconds, the red and blue flash of police lights shattered the routine. Two white Orlando police officers pulled her over. In their eyes, she was just another black driver behind tinted windows. What they didn't realize was that the woman they had just stopped was one of the most powerful legal figures in the state of Florida. The police body camera footage of the encounter quickly went viral. It begins with Ayala handing over her driver's license without hesitation, calmly and respectfully. There's no defiance, just poised compliance. The officers, clearly unaware of who she is, ask what agency she works for. When Ayala replies, "I'm the state attorney," their demeanor changes. There's a pause, a shift in tone, a quiet unraveling of the assumption that they were just stopping a random motorist. The officers appear visibly flustered, unsure of how to proceed. Their justification for the stop comes quickly but clumsily. One officer says her license plate didn't come back, meaning it didn't register in their system. Another adds that her windows seem too tinted. It all sounds like a scramble, a rush to rationalize a stop that was beginning to look deeply problematic. Ayala, without raising her voice or escalating the situation, calmly asks for their names. Her voice is clear, her words measured. She doesn't protest. She doesn't shout. Instead, she asserts herself in the most professional, dignified way possible. It's a striking moment of quiet power. A black woman, targeted and stopped for dubious reasons, using knowledge, restraint, and her rightful authority to hold the officers accountable. The officers eventually back down, their posture shifting from dominant to deferential. In the days that followed, the media exploded with coverage of the incident. Commentators, civil rights activists, and ordinary citizens pointed to the traffic stop as a textbook example of racial profiling. If a black woman holding the highest prosecutorial office in her district could be stopped without cause, what did that mean for the countless unnamed black men and women who face police scrutiny daily? Ayala herself acknowledged that the stop appeared to be legal under state policy, since government vehicles often don't register license tags in the public system. But she was also clear. She had broken no law, the tint on her windows was well within legal limits, and the encounter was about more than technicalities. It was about perception, power, and profiling. This is a teachable moment, Ayala said afterward in a public statement. She didn't lash out. She didn't file a lawsuit. Instead, she used the moment to open a conversation about police conduct, accountability, and race. She reached out to the Orlando police chief, requesting an open dialogue to ensure that officers were not engaging in discriminatory practices. Her response wasn't just professional, it was visionary. She saw beyond herself and recognized how her experience echoed the silent, daily injustices faced by people of color, particularly black women. This incident was about far more than a license plate or tinted windows. It was about the layers of identity that people like Ayala carry into every public space, black mother, woman, leader, and how, too often, the most visible trait to those in power is the color of one's skin. Ayala, even in the back seat of her own story, revealed the truth about systemic bias with poise and precision. That night in Orlando, a routine stop pulled back the curtain on an ugly reality: that no title or position can fully shield black Americans from the weight of assumption. The brief traffic stop that caught Florida State Attorney Aramis Ayala on a routine drive home did more than expose a lapse in policing. It exposed a deeper, more troubling truth about American society. In that moment, Ayala wasn't just a motorist pulled over for a questionable reason. She was a black woman, a mother, and a public servant whose authority did not shield her from the same systemic assumptions and racial biases that target black Americans every day. The encounter laid bare how fragile safety, dignity, and respect can be, even for someone with immense institutional power. Ayala's identity is layered. A trailblazing attorney, Florida's first black elected state attorney, a law professor, a mother, and a vocal advocate for criminal justice reform. She did not achieve her position through privilege or favor. She earned it through persistence, intellect, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Yet, when those officers approached her car that night, none of that mattered. They didn't see her achievements. They saw her skin. They saw her as a potential threat, or at the very least, as someone worth stopping. Her professional title, her degrees, her courtroom victories, they were invisible in that instant. This dissonance between identity and perception is the painful tension that many black mothers and professionals live with. The world demands they be twice as good, twice as composed, and twice as prepared. Yet, even with all of that, they remain vulnerable to suspicion and scrutiny that others are spared. Ayala's experience was a public demonstration of what black mothers often experience in silence, a moment of fear masked by calm, of anger restrained by professionalism, of injustice met with grace. That night, she was not only a public figure, she was every black woman who has been questioned, followed, pulled over, or disrespected without cause. What makes Ayala's response even more powerful is how she chose to navigate the aftermath. She didn't sensationalize the incident or allow it to descend into partisan noise. Instead, she released a clear, firm public statement affirming that the stop, while technically legal under state procedures, raised important questions about policing practices. More importantly, she emphasized her commitment to constructive dialogue. My goal is to have a constructive and mutually respectful relationship between law enforcement and the community, she said. I look forward to sitting down to have an open dialogue with the chief of the Orlando Police Department regarding how this incident impacts that goal. This restraint was not weakness, it was strategy. Ayala refused to let the narrative become one of anger versus authority. She insisted that justice doesn't only live in the courtroom. It must exist in everyday actions, in everyday accountability. She modeled what leadership looks like in the face of insult and injury. Not retaliation, but recalibration. She showed that dignity itself can be an act of resistance, and that true strength often lies in restraint. Her experience resonates across communities, especially among black women who carry the dual burden of gender and racial bias. They know what it feels like to be overachievers and yet underestimated protectors of their children and yet suspected by society. A tinted window becomes more than glass, it becomes a barrier of mistrust. A license plate becomes more than numbers, it becomes a trigger for profiling. But Ayala, in her quiet refusal to be dismissed, turned a personal affront into a public lesson. In the end, her message was clear. No one, regardless of rank or role, should be immune to bias, but neither should they be resigned to it. Her story asks us to reflect. What does it say about our justice system when the very people tasked with upholding the law can be so easily subjected to its failings? What changes when a routine stop reveals not criminality, but inequality? And what happens when those in power choose to confront injustice not with vengeance, but with vision? Aramis Ayala's ordeal is not just a story of profiling, it's a story of presence, of being seen, despite the system's design to overlook or undermine, of standing firm, not in spite of being a black woman, but because of it, and of daring to imagine justice not as an abstract ideal, but as something that must begin on the street, in the car, with recognition of each other's humanity.